Hello everybody, my name is Danny TCV, the Horn Violin. How fortunate for leaders that man does not think. That is a fairly well-known, famous quote that's been said for quite a long time. And though it's probably been said long before one individual in particular, I'll give you a guess. Who do you think is the person in question who is a significant figure in history globally? That is the one who made that phrase famous. The famous and very well-known and documented historical figure around the world who made that phrase famous is one Adolf Hitler, tiny mustache man himself. It's true. It kind of goes back into the last video I did, political commentary video I did for this month, January. As I referred to back and mentioned back in that last political commentary video for this month, I had mentioned that Adolf Hitler was, though incredibly mentally unstable, and thus incredibly heavily mentally ill with a lot of different issues that kept seemingly progressing worse and worse as time wore on. And of course he knew that, he was well aware of it. He was an intensely intelligent and intuitive individual, to the extent that he fully understood exactly how the human mind worked, to the extent that he knew and fully understood exactly how to manipulate people pretty much by giving virtually no effort whatsoever into believing anything and everything you want them to believe and say, and basically echo for you, to follow you, to do as you say, and to continue to indoctrinate those around them, especially the young. He fully understood how easy it is to manipulate a human mind, how to get them to sincerely believe, because he understood that they would sincerely believe and demand that it was strictly upon their own volition, their own power, and under their own choice that they made, without influence, the decision to believe and follow whatever it was. But see, he understood that in reality, those of them that said that and demanded this, that chose to follow him and his doctrines, his speeches and his Arianism, he fully understood that they would of course believe that and demand that. But in reality, they were lying to themselves, because they didn't do that under their own volition. He did that via manipulating their minds. That's how pathetically simple the human mind is. But the main reason why I bring that up, and why it's of extreme importance as well, to remember that Adolf Hitler, one of the most notorious dictators in world history, made that phrase so famous, is because of the fact that, one, of course, he is absolutely spot on and correct, but two, is the fact that history is repeating itself once again, as it always does. In fact, somewhere, wherever he is, Karl Marx is screaming out in pain and rolling over in his grave right now, because the political cycle of the world that he showed us all, it just keeps happening. And of course, people refuse to break that cycle. In fact, they seem to still be even more reliant on it than ever, and more desiring of it than ever for some weird reason. Oh boy. The repeating of history, though, in that sense, is happening right here in the USA, the United States of America. Or more like the disunited, arrogant states of idiots. If we're being accurate, that's a different story. It's happening right here, right now. In this very moment, we're going through, step by step, the very exact steps that Germany took, leading to the Third Reich, aka Adolf Hitler's era, Nazi Germany. The exact same steps that Russia took, going from the monarchy to the USSR in dictatorship under Stalin. the same steps that North Korea took, that some of Vietnam has taken, that modern day China has taken, is still currently going down the road of, that Duterte in the Philippines is taking, that Pinochet in the United States military took in Chile back in the 70s after they assassinated, outright murdered Salvador Allende, Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela. I mean, the list just keeps going on and on and on. Throughout world history, especially more modern history for some reason, this is just how the script works. And it literally is, quite literally, a script. I don't know if it physically exists, but it's there. Because you look at every single one of these, and they went from a similar state to the US of A before now to where the US is right now and where it's headed. The US is taking and mimicking the exact script, step for step, progressing towards a dictatorship as we speak right fucking now. Literally in this moment, we are heading like a bat out of hell, straight swan dive directly into a dictatorship state. Just because we're not there yet does not mean that we won't be there tomorrow, or we won't be there in 2 years from now. The fact of the matter is, we're headed there, and faster every single day. They're taking each and every step. And yep, the main steps, the first steps they're probably taking as we speak right now, is the whole deplatforming of people, censorship, and banning of people that have certain beliefs, that say certain things, that have different lines of thought, that believe differently, that think differently, that see things differently, perceive the world differently, understand things differently. Anything that goes against the mainstream narrative is treated as if it is a literal plague, or as if it is a direct threat to the very lives of every living being on this earth. That is inherent massive danger, and it must be put to a stop. It must be killed, it must be whatever, imprisoned, restrained, or as they rebrand all of that to, in politics, regulated. It's still dictation. They're dictating. They're dictators. They're dictating to us what we can and cannot believe, what we can and cannot say, what we can and cannot suggest, what words we can and cannot use, what inflections, I'm sure, are just around the corner. They're going to start dictating to us what we can and can't use in inflections, let alone, I suppose, quote-unquote titles, personal titles. So as the PC crowd calls them, pronouns. Which they're already trying to do, and they already are sort of having some success with now. There's an endless list of things that they do, but it all comes down to this whole free speech thing and sharing your perspectives. Freedom of speech and expression is imperative. In fact, to me, it's wild that it even had to be politicized and put into a constitution of a nation. Like, it's literally, to me, just simple common sense. Like, it's literally just flat out common sense. Like, you would think anybody with a brain, even a quarter of a function of a quarter of their brain, literally, would understand, like, that's just common sense. Like, you would just think free speech and expression, literally free, as in there's no boundaries. Yeah, absolutely. Same with choice and beliefs. That's just common sense to have that. And that we all have that innately. But no, sadly it had to be politicized. And so because of that, now government and also corporations are trying to control what we can and cannot believe, what we can and cannot say, what we can and cannot share, what perspectives we're allowed to have and not have, etc., etc. We're literally going down the exact scripted path, step by step, to a dictatorship in the United States. Somewhere out there, Joseph Stalin, on the other side, is laughing his ass off in the most hearty, Santa-like fashion. True guttural belly laughing, with that signature massive twinkle he had in his eye. Oh, so much pride is in him right now. I guarantee you. He's laughing his fucking ass off, looking at the United States right now, and he's saying, I called it. I knew this was going to happen. I just chose not to share it with anyone that I knew this was going to happen. I guarantee to you, that man knew that this was going to happen here. Literally the United States, which is part of the reason why I feel like, if it's possible, that's what he's doing right now, looking at the United States, because it adds so much more to the ability for him to laugh at it and take more pride in it and just get the biggest kick out of it, because of the fact that literally the United States is vowing to become the very thing, and is just rushing towards becoming the very thing that they said that they could not stand and they had to kill, that they despised, that they had to go to war against, where it was in the world, and crush it, which was technically fascism, technically autocratic dictatorships. That's why they hated Stalin so much. That's why they hated the USSR. So the point here is, the United States is guaranteed right now marching straight for a dictatorship. And yes, that is sort of like a pun, sort of a reference, half intended, when I say marching toward a true dictatorship. This is the first fucking shit they do. They always cry out for the greater good and for your protection and or for your safety, to protect our nation's interests, to protect our citizens, to protect you from nefarious individuals, to protect you from misinformation. See, they always rebrand it to whatever they know the mass majority will not think or not be rational towards, but react to. They know they're going to get the biggest reaction out of, and therefore, likely it is, in fact, it's a guarantee at that point, the easiest way to manipulate the masses into believing and following with what they want and what they are telling them. In other words, you need to give up these rights to us. You need to just volunteer to give them up because it's for your safety. It's for your it's for, it really is for your safety, Can't be misinformed, That's just too dangerous. I mean, the fact that people believe in a flat earth and it literally has zero impact on literally anything and everything in life itself. On them, on you, on everyone. It literally has no impact whatsoever. It does nothing. Whether you believe in a spherical earth or a flat one, or a trapezoid earth. But, instead of being rational and realizing that, just react to it negatively with emotion and act like that's such dangerous misinformation and it's damaging our children if they choose to believe it because it has no impact. But let's pretend it does have an impact. Wait, that's right. It definitely has a massive impact on life itself. I mean, your life expectancy drops by 30 years if you believe that the Earth is flat. But it goes up by 25 if you believe in a trapezoid Earth. That's the stuff they don't want to tell you and they won't teach you in school. I mean, at this point, we might as well argue that and say that. Because it's exactly the same kind of bullshit. It shouldn't fucking matter to anybody. And this is a fact. It should not matter to anybody. And it should not terrify you or scare you. But it should actually empower you and make you feel amazing to have such a endlessly diverse and ever-expanding set of different ideals and beliefs and feelings and opinions and perspectives and stances and information, whatever else. Like, that's fucking beautiful. It's fucking amazing. And that's part of what makes us so, unique individuals. We all see and understand and interpret everything, words, even to the tiniest things or to the biggest things. The entire world and life itself, we literally all interpret in our own unique ways. We literally don't. Nobody's gonna necessarily see 100% of the things the exact same way because it's just not ever gonna happen. That's just not how life works. That's not how we're built. The fact of the matter is, it's a good thing, not a bad thing, to have a massive diversity, literally endless diversity of different opinions, perspectives, feelings, beliefs, whatever it is. if you believe in the lizard people and you believe in pizza shop pedophile rings under the sewer grates inside of it, if you believe in the sewer rats are actually alien spies for the government, and you believe that all birds are actually drones and whatever else, whatever combination of things you believe, like all that stuff, it might be lunacy to the average person. Heck, it doesn't make sense to me. But I'm not going to treat you any fucking differently. And I'm certainly not going to say, well, you deserve to have your rights taken away to say those things and believe them because you're damaging our children. No, they're not damaging anything. Anybody to believe that stuff doesn't hurt anybody. It doesn't hurt anything. It just happens to be different than what the mass majority of us accept as reality. There's always, nothing's impossible, so it's always possible any of that shit could end up being true. It'll be wild, but maybe it is. But obviously most of us choose to believe it isn't real, and that's cool. Like, it doesn't matter what you believe. It's like, if you fucking believe the Bible and thus Jesus is real and whatever else, good for you. But it literally has no impact on life. Nothing changes, because the reality is, it's just life itself. Like, that's just how it's made to be. We're all gonna believe different things. I myself am an atheist. I don't believe in a god or gods. I don't believe in a higher power. I never have, actually. And I was born into a religious family too, so it's funny to me. But no, I don't. It's cool. Like, you can believe in that, and that's cool too. Like I always tell some, even my family and stuff. It's like, we'll see what happens, like, whether it's J-dubs, so it's like, okay, we'll see if I end up in paradise and have everlasting life, or if I end up just never coming back to essence or life after I croak, and I'm just a part of the earth permanently. Or maybe we'll find out that there is a heaven or hell, and that I go to one of those, or maybe there's a purgatory and I go to one of those, like, or maybe there's nothing. Or maybe there's an entirely different dimension that our non-material selves end up in when we croak, like, or maybe we're just kind of in the quote-unquote ether, the unknown, when we die, or our spirits, or whatever you want to call it, our energy fields, or whatever, and so we're left to figure out what to do with ourselves there. Like, there's a lot of potentiality. But like I tell everybody, it's like, we'll see what happens. Like, I'm not concerned with what happens. If whatever happens, I really don't care. But we'll see. Like, it literally, that's how it's fucking supposed to be. Like, just agree to disagree and move on. Like, it doesn't matter what the fuck you believe. You can believe a rock, a literal fucking boulder, random, let's say it's a specific boulder. It's a random boulder, I don't know, at 20.98693 degrees north and 15.96135 west on the earth at that exact point. Cool. You can believe that that's the most sentient, omniscient being on the face of the earth. It's the oldest living being. We aren't capable of comprehending its sentience, so we just see it as a rock. Great. Like, cool, good for you. I don't care. It's interesting. I find it awesome that you think that it's a thing, that you have a story like that. But it has no impact. So why should I care? And even if it did have an impact, why should I care? It's actually great. It's literally, when I say good for you, I mean legitimately, as insincere as it sounds, when I say it, I really mean it. Good for you. Like, I'm legitimately happy for you that that's a belief you have, or that that's a feeling you have, or whatever it is, That's great. Like, cool. It really is good for you. It doesn't mean I agree. Well, good for you, Like, you should be able to say whatever the fuck you want, and believe whatever the fuck you want, and express whatever the fuck you want, and share it with the fucking world. And just like people deserve just as much of a right to be able to reject it, or say what they're going to say to you about it, or tell you you're the worst, most terrible piece of shit, and sorry excuse of existence to ever exist in all of existence, and that should be totally accepted. That should be totally okay. Like, you can give as much slurs and hate speech as you want. That should be totally allowed. That's under true freedoms. So it's true freedom of speech and expression. Express those beliefs. It doesn't mean that you should, go out there and say, well, now I'm going to have to take away your rights because that was hurtful. No. No. Like, they should have the ability to say that. Just like you should be able to have your own honest, strong opinions that you can freely express without repercussions or punishment. Like, that's a good thing. Like, I really believe that's a fantastic thing, especially considering, if you think about it, it literally shows you, it gives you like an introspection into each individual person you interact with and come across, where they are at that point in their life, how they're really feeling, and like how maybe just like how they're feeling and how they are, where they are at in life in that moment. Hell, maybe how even they were raised. Like, it doesn't matter. It gives you some insight, and that's a good thing too, because then gives you the ability and now the information and the experience to say, okay, do I want to associate with this person? Do I want to interact with this person again? Is it good for me to do that, or would it be healthier and the smarter and better decision for me to say, you know what, let's just go our separate ways and not associate again, because obviously we just aren't good for each other. Like, that's the, again, part of the beauty of true autonomy, of freedom of speech and expression, a belief and opinion and choice. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. To fearmonger against that is to quite literally try to install a dictatorship. That it itself is literally a dictation, making it literally a dictator's policy, or dictator's beliefs in shipping a dictatorship. They're literally shipping their dictation onto you that you're expected to follow. So controlling speech is not okay. Just like expression or any of the other stuff, it's never going to be okay. It's never going to be acceptable, and it's never going to be safe or anything good. It's always going to be dangerous and really toxic and bad, because it's like a lot of people have said, including, say, Crystal and Sager of The Hill. They literally have pointed out, and there's so many other people throughout history who have said the same thing as they did, and it's because it's fucking true. It's history repeating itself. Once they start, they never stop. It's never going to be good enough. It's never going to be enough. They're always going to have to take away more. So, and they're always going to have to restrict more, which means once they started to censor, the first bit of censoring they started to do, supposedly to protect us from supposedly bad things, that was the start of a perpetual progression into further and further control of speech, expression, and censorship. That's why, really quickly after that, we saw even more censorship, and then more, and then more, and then attempts at trying to literally make it illegal to use certain terms or address people in certain ways or say certain words. And then immediately after that, we started to have suspensions that turned into the next step. So they progressed again, then it was bans, and then full-on deplatforming. Not just of people, but of entire organizations and groups. Because again, it was supposedly for the greater good, supposedly for safety. Again, bald-faced lie. Just because you think differently, just because you believe differently, just because you see things differently, understand things differently, interpret things differently, come to different conclusions, just because you express different things, just because you disagree, does not make you an evil person. It does not make it bad, what you're expressing or saying. It doesn't even make it wrong or right. It just happens to be what you believe, what you're therefore sharing and expressing. There's nothing fucking wrong or dangerous about that at all, because the only real danger in that is the censorship, is the deplatforming and banning of entire groups and people, and in this case, say, social media sites and video hosting sites, because, well, they have too right-wing of political opinions and people on there, so we're going to ban them and deplatform them and say, you're not allowed to do this. In fact, we're going to even try to literally get legal policies that make it illegal to express and have these opinions. And it's so fucking true. What a lot of people are saying right now is literal facts. Because the left is doing this to the right, it's a guarantee. Because it will swing right back into the right's control. The Senate, the House, the presidency, all of it. It will go right back to the right wing. It will go right back to the red, right back to the Republicans and the conservatives, as it always does. It goes back and forth all the time. It always has. It never hasn't. It always will. And now that everything's more polarized, it is guaranteed to get way more severe in its swings. So now that it's swung to the left, and the left has a strong control over multiple seats, most of the major seats of true executive control in the government, specifically the Senate, and now also the presidency, what that indicates and means is that now, since they're doing this and they're thinking it's totally great and it's for safety and for the greater good, once it goes back into the Republicans' favor, it's a guarantee they're going to retaliate, and they're going to do the exact same shit, but to the Democrats, the liberals, the progressives, whatever you consider yourself while you're on the left side of the political spectrum. It's a guarantee. They're going to fire back. And here's the thing about the right. They know how to fucking kick your teeth in. If you're going to fucking beat them into the dirt and try to deplatform them, censor them, and keep them from being able to freely share their stances politically, their opinions politically, their perspectives politically, whatever it is, if you think it's bad now, you wait until they get control. And then you'll really have it will be the first time you'll actually have a legitimate reason to complain. Or that is, you would if you weren't already doing the same shit to them right now. But it's going to be way worse for you once they're in power. And when they take away your voice and your right to express your own personal stances and beliefs and everything, and that will happen. It's a guarantee. You think it's good now, and it's not going to impact you, infect you, because you're on the right side of history, or whatever the fuck you want to brand it as. Guaranteed. You're next. They will come for you, and they will take away your voice too. Your platforms, all of it. It's a literal inevitability. An absolute guarantee. A fact of reality. It's undeniable, and it will not be able to be stopped. Because you started it, and you've encouraged it, and you've backed it up. And so you're going to deserve every bit of that deplatforming, of that banning, and of that literal control of your speech, and the fact that you're going to be shut down. And you really need to really realize how much you fucked up. With all that said, I sure as hell hope somehow, some way, dictatorship won't occur here, but it's inevitable. I really believe that. And especially with the history of the world, the political cycle of the world that Karl Marx outlined for us, which has always been true throughout the world's history, it proves its inevitability for every nation on earth. It will inevitably enter a dictatorship, which will lead to totalitarianism, and totalitarianism is what leads to its literal demise. It collapses. It always self-implodes. We're staring down the start of a dictatorship here in the United States, and most of the nation is oblivious to it because they're, whether they realize it or not, a part of the backing party behind making sure it occurs. They're empowering it, and they're empowering its build-up. They're empowering its development by supporting the whole idea of censorship, suspension, bans, and deplatforming, and it's not okay. It's very fucking dangerous. And like people keep saying, once it starts, it will never end. Because it will never be enough to the people in power. That said, yeah, I just really wanted to talk about this and get this off my chest and express it. I guess I might as well mention this. Apparently, as of the last few days, and I'm recording this on the 22nd of January, of the last few days, about the last 3 or 4 days, there's been a bunch of channels that have been getting completely suspended and or taken down and or even straight up just demonetized for a full month as a penalty because they said certain things about China that apparently are not acceptable. A lot of them are actually economists, like fully independent economists in whatever sector of economy, of economists, the economy studies they are, whether they're in stocks of some kind or investments, stocks and investments, just general economics, studying the systems of the world, they're getting completely demonetized for full months, or even suspended, or completely deplatformed. So kicked off and their channels pulled off because they're saying certain things about China and specifically their economies. And even ones that are just simply, and all of them are just literally expressing the truth, the fact of how their, say, economic system works, how their stock market works, all that shit. And they're getting deplatformed or suspended or penalized a full month's worth of monetization on their, literally every video on their channel, on their entire channel, as a punishment from Alphabet Incorporated, aka Google or YouTube, for not actually violating in terms of service anything, because it's not, there's nothing literally under TOS or literally any of the other policies that says you can't say these certain things. So obviously it literally is the Chinese government that is controlling the interests of these major tech corporations, in this case Google. And it's weird too, because the amount of length of time, like, it's just weird how many years it took them to get to this point, especially with all things considered. The way they've already had a lot of bias to the Chinese market and the Chinese government already, with the fact that they're not, as people say, it's banned in China, or YouTube is banned in China. It's not banned, actually. It never has been, but it's intensely censored. So basically the Chinese government hand selects what channels and what videos and what narratives they'll allow their citizens that go onto YouTube to watch, see, subscribe to. And they dictate directly to Google themselves, hey, these are the only channels we'll allow you to show on your website. These are the only videos of those channels we'll allow you to show on your website. And it has to fit these parameters. If it doesn't, and we find any that do violate it, well, you can expect to lose probably a good few $1 billion in revenue. How does that sound? And of course, Google wants their money. So they're like, sold. And so that's how it's always been in China with Google or Alphabet, aka YouTube, and how it's functioned over there. So it's never actually been banned. But it's just that in itself, that fact, that's how they've operated for pretty much their entire existence in China. That's why I find it so incredibly bizarre and wild and wacky that it's taken them this long and this many years to get to such a point of bias to China, and they're probably billions they make off of them, that they actually decided that now they're going to play even more hardcore bias to the Chinese government's dictations to them to be able to still have a presence there in their market and thus make money, and actually penalize people and punish them, try to scare them off from talking badly or even honestly about China in any way, shape, or form. But that's itself is still control of speech, expression, and censorship. It's still deplatforming. It's still banning and suspending and punishing people for not sharing a specific narrative and view that they want them to share or have. It's controlling the narrative. It's controlling the speech. It's controlling the expression. It's controlling the beliefs. It's controlling it all. In this case, out of protection for their fucking bottom line. And this really, I guess, is actually a good point to make. I don't support government intervention, nor do I support corporate or elite intervention either in free speech, expression, choice, opinion, etc. I find them all equally distrustworthy and equally all out for them of their own gain. They're just out for they're just out for themselves. They always have been. They always will be. They don't never give a fuck about you. They never have. They never will. If you ever thought that they've given even the slightest damn about you guys as customers, you're wrong. The only thing they give a damn about is your vote, if they're politicians, and your money, if they're the people who are actually truly in power around the world, which are the global elites, who own those same fucking mega corporations that are typically tech companies and banks. That's it. They only care about your fucking money. And the politicians, which are their puppets, only care about your votes and your money. You know, it's called tax money, or their money, which is your money, but also theirs. Because, well, they kind of say so. And so that's how the global system's set up. And so, of course, they goes into exactly how they make you required to be reliant upon them to basically lead your life for you and control you. And that's square one right there. But, yeah. So, all of that said, I hope you got the gist of it. Maybe you learned something today. I don't know. But, yeah, I do not know what the hell to say to you at all. I don't know how the fuck you could be so, in my opinion, intensely ignorant and offensively wrong, in my opinion, to support any form of censorship if you do, let alone any form of suspensions or bans or whatever, just because you don't support or like what somebody said. And sure, I get the idea that it's like, okay, well, what if somebody incited, they had a lot of influence and they incited violence? Hint, hint, wink, wink. Well, first off, that was not very violent. And it was days, and literal days later, that suddenly they're like, oh, by the way, besides the one woman that was apparently accidentally shot by police at the Capitol that died, there was apparently a bunch more that died too. Did you hear about that? Yeah, they all died inside the Capitol. Oh, by the way, also days later, same day, they came out with that. Like, oh, by the way, there's also was a massive set of brawling and beating the shit out of each other in there. There's a lot of fights. And I'm not going to apologize because there's no reason to apologize for this. I do not regret to inform you that I do not believe a damn thing about that. One, there was literal straight up people in there with cameras that were live streaming all over within the crowd that entered that building. And even from the outside, there was cameras that were live streaming 24/7, that were recording 24/7. We saw it all. And it took, especially considering, even if you didn't have that, the fact that it took about 2 to 3 days to suddenly be like, by the way, there was besides that woman who apparently had died in the hospital that was accidentally shot, there was like 3 other people, or however many more, that supposedly died and got killed inside the Capitol. 2 or 3 days later, then suddenly everybody's like, oh, by the way, there was more people that died. Yeah, they got killed too. That was always the case. No, it wasn't. That's called a lie. If you wait that long, that's the kind of shit that will immediately be obvious. Not just because, again, in this case, you had the fucking live streaming cameras from all different parts of that thing the entire time. Or there were phones or actual cameras or whatever else. You had the recording the entire time. And again, this is from all over inside and all over outside. That would have definitely shown it. Or at least you would have heard something. None of that, even the brawls showed. There's a lot of people shoving and pushing, of course. You know, they got riled up. But there was no actual fights that really properly broke out. That's bullshit. You would have seen that. You would have heard it. So, to me, the reality, and thus the truth here with that whole situation is all of that's fabricated, and it's a lie, and it's total bullshit. But it is meant to get you more riled up. And think about it. It actually, now that I think about it, because I'm just now realizing, it actually perfectly lines up, including timing, let alone with the way they made people think about it afterward. It lines up impeccably with the deplatforming and even outright banning of Trump on pretty much every possible social media platform and medium out there. And then completely deplatforming and banning Parler on pretty much anywhere you could normally access it. All because, well, there's a lot of people trying to incite violence and revolution on those websites. Who cares? Here's the stupid thing. One, nobody should have the legal right to ban a president, let alone your own fucking president, for any reason. I don't care if he's literal Adolf Hitler. Say Adolf Hitler had his speeches televised via Twitter, because he is in the modern day, and Facebook and any other medium. And he was preaching all this stuff in YouTube today. He's preaching all of his rhetoric there, and his Aryanism. He should never, say that was the case, he shouldn't be banned, he shouldn't be suspended, he should not be deplatformed, he should not be censored. In fact, it's imperative that we don't ever censor even the slightest damned thing, because it's especially imperative for future tense when you're looking back in history. Why do you think we even know and actually can still watch Adolf Hitler's speeches he gave? Why do you think we have entire transcripts of them? Why do you think we have news broadcasts with them? Why do you think we still have all of this access, unadulterated, pure, and raw in its nature, of Adolf Hitler and his addresses and his interviews and all this shit, his rhetoric? Why do you think we have that? Because they didn't censor anything. That's how you fucking know this shit. In fact, in Deutschland, in Germany, it's frowned upon by like most of the rest of the world, but it's actually highly intelligent. They use literally all of it and do not filter or censor a damn thing in school, especially early on, so they can teach people and their kids, obviously, specifically, how Adolf Hitler got to, how he developed basically throughout his life, and so how he ended up getting to that point, and then also how the politics kept developing, how the nation was in different, at the different points in time, how the state of it was, socially, politically, all the other ways, to basically show exactly how they got to a point where they ended up electing Adolf Hitler, or brother Adolf Hitler ended up gaining power, however he did, why people supported him, and also what led up to that point, socially, politically, all of that, what kind of state the nation was in leading up to it and then through it, and basically so that you know exactly how this shit develops, why it happens, and thus effectively how you can notice it and then prevent it and say, nah, never again, that shit's not gonna fly. No, because they don't censor anything. They even show them entire footage, unedited, raw, real, pure footage from the Holocaust and the concentration camps and the experiments they did in these schools, because it's important and imperative, and they understand that. It's a better deterrent anyway, because of the fact that it's real, raw, and they have to go through the trauma and all of this with it. Plus, they're learning how the minds of people there changed, how everything socially and politically changed there, why it ended up happening in the first place. So it literally ends up being more preventative than anything of accepting of this shit ever again. They know now what not to do. That's exactly it. Like that's why it's so fucking important, because it's such a useful tool, future tense, but also past tense, because obviously in the future, when they're looking to the past, into the history books, that's why you never want to censor anything. You don't want to keep anything out. You want to as bluntly honest as possible, exactly as it was, raw, real, unedited, uncensored, unadulterated, untouched. So that in the future, you can look back and people can be like, well, fuck. And they can really get an accurate gauge on what things were really like and how things got to the points that they did and why the shit happened, all of that. You're never going to be able to have that if you censor even the slightest bit, if you edit in the slightest bit, if you outtake in the slightest bit, if you control in the slightest bit, if you regulate in the slightest bit, if you do anything to fuck with the raw, real, pure nature of it at all, you're fucking yourself over royally. And you're fucking everybody in the future over royally. Because they're not going to get the whole story. They're only going to get one perspective. They're only going to get one set of things, because you wanted to control it for, quote unquote, the safety and good of our people. Bullshit. It's also, by the way, for the greater good and for your safety are also two of the most overly used and heavily relied upon phrases that, once again, autocrats, authoritarians, dictators, and totalitarian leaders rely upon and utilize endlessly throughout world history. Kim Jong-un uses it currently. Xi Jinping is using it. Obviously, Vladimir Putin uses it. Viktor Orban, who's a populist in Hungary, uses that. Erdogan in Turkey uses it. Sometimes the leadership of Iran will use it. Saudi Arabia uses it all the time. Britain's using it. France has used it endlessly. Poland's been slowly starting to use it, unfortunately, more and more, because they're starting to go more populist, unfortunately. It's like, it's popping up everywhere, but it's like starting to really become a theme where these same fucking things, the same exact script, the same exact steps are being taken by many different nations in the world. But let me tell you, the United States is not one that people of the United States or a lot of other nations in the Western world would ever have expected to go down this route. Unless you're one of the rare few in the United States or the Western world who understands how politics in the world works, and so basically people's minds work when it comes down to this shit, and you've kind of paid attention and observed from afar how shit's been going. Then obviously you've always known your entire life, and it's just been you watching each step be taken over the years. And now we're to the point where it becomes cumulative because of how rapidly the pace is being picked up, of how quickly each step is being taken, and how accepting the mass majority of the US population has been happy to accept it and actually sincerely believe the bullshit lie and facade that it's for your own good, it's for your safety, it's for the greater good. It really is. No, it's for their own good. It's for their control. So it's basically to fulfill their own selfish wants and desires, which is complete, total dictation and control over we, the people, over the citizenry, over we, the serfs, the peasants. Because let's be honest, you know what the United States and all modern governments are, no matter what nation you're talking about in the world, they're all a form of modern feudalism, a modern serfdom. That's all any of government is in the world. And the United States is probably the most akin to a true feudalistic system of governance. Socially, politically, you name it. The United States matches feudalism to a T. It's just rebranded and modernized for the current day. And by the current day, I mean like 1869. But go figure. More predictability, but I'm really digressing. So again, I hope you guys learned something today, or I don't know, gain new perspective, whatever it is. And again, I hope to hell and back, I hope to whatever is out there, nothing, or whatever isn't out there, I don't know, that you're not dumb enough to actually believe that there's ever an instance where any form of censorship, any form of deplatforming, any form of banning or suspensions actually makes logical sense and is actually a safe or good thing to do. Because otherwise, we're just going to literally be thrust down that path of full-on totalitarianism endlessly quicker than the world's probably ever seen before. So I guess I thank you for listening, and hope to see you in whatever the next commentary or video or live stream might be. Stay safe out there. Agree to disagree. Be calm, mature, rational, non-reactionary adults, please. Accept each other for who we are, what we believe, and just set aside differences, and don't treat each other any differently just because of the fact, or avoid each other just because of the fact that we might disagree on something, or might think something that one person believes that we've met is complete lunacy, or, you know, wildly out of reality than what you do. Just accept that difference and be happy about it instead. Like, be proud that there's that much diversity out there. There's that much fucking difference. And try to get, I don't know, perspective from them, some understanding of how they came to that position, instead of trying to say, well, you're wrong, or here's why you're wrong, or here's why you should consider changing your mind, or whatever way you want to word that. Don't try to change their mind. Don't even try to change your own mind. Just accept it as what it is, which is probably profoundly interesting and wacky to you. Agree to disagree. Be calm, mature, rational adults, which is what they do. And don't treat each other any differently just because you disagree, or just because you think somebody else is a lunatic. Like, just be nice to each other. Be respectful and kind to each other. Accept each other for who we are. And that's, I guess, what I would encourage you guys to do here. Not just today, not just tomorrow, not just tonight, but how about for the rest of life? That would be great. See you all
later.
Bye-bye.